Right, awesome, cool. So I'm going to take this, start sharing it out, and we'll wait for a couple folks to get in here. So those of you out there just joining us, we're going to get started right around 6 o'clock, so another 4 or 5 minutes, we'll get going. So hang tight. All right, everybody, just a couple more minutes, we'll get started. Just waiting for a couple more people to kind of trickle into the live stream. And hang tight, we'll have Ben take it away in just a moment. All righty, hey, thanks everybody for waiting. We're going to go ahead and get started. Real quick, a couple housekeeping items. Just wanted to say, as always, as we enter this new year, NashJS is looking for talented speakers. So if you find yourself interested in giving a talk on anything JavaScript related, JavaScript adjacent, or programming, or really anything, we'd love to have you. So go to nashjs.org. At the top of the page, there's like a form. You can go on there and submit a request to talk. We're also looking for ideas for any talks or any kind of things you'd like for us to cover, series, things like that. Also, feel free to make a suggestion on that form. We're also, if you go to nashdev.com and join the Slack channel, you can join the JavaScript channel on the Slack server and post ideas on there as well. So we'd love to have you. So yeah, without further ado, I'd like to introduce Ben Miner. Ben is going to give a talk on Serverless Cloud, which is really exciting. He's going to kind of do a dive through the platform, kind of explain how it all works and get us all set up and running. So Ben, feel free to expand on that intro. I'm sure I didn't do a super great job. Thanks.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ben Miner. I'm a Nashville native and a software engineer at Serverless Inc. And I've been there probably since like June last year. And since then, I've been working on this really cool product called Serverless Cloud that I really think is going to change the game here in serverless development. So without further ado, I'm just going to dive right in. Let me click. So first, I just want to kind of touch on what is serverless development. I know some people may be unfamiliar or are really into it. So just to start off, though, yes, there are still servers. There are always servers, but that's the first joke everyone says. You know, there's still servers, service development, but it kind of takes away the responsibility of managing a server. And if you've ever managed a server, it's a lot. There's security updates, security patches, and keeping the operating system updated as well. So what serverless is, it kind of just makes it cloud native. I put that in quotes for a reason, but they abstract away these primitive systems that you may need, like a queue or database, and it makes it kind of an instantiation of a service. So you just kind of subscribe to the things you may need for your application, you tie them together, and you use them. And a lot of these places, a lot of this gave way to the infrastructure as a service boom we're seeing right now. You know, you have every major tech company that also is a cloud company doing infrastructure as a service, you know, whether it's Google, AWS, or Microsoft. And you just pay for units of capacity, your use, and maybe your scale, but you're not paying for uptime, which is the biggest difference here. And a reason a lot of people switch to it, because it's way cheaper relatively to running a server all the time. And it's just more cost efficient, more manageable, and it gives you this pre-built infrastructure to build things with. You don't have to worry about things breaking on the lowest level possible. So with that all being said, how do developers really adapt to this, especially, you know, more back-end developers? So with less emphasis on managing an actual server with hands-on management, you had more the DevOps role going into the developer. So typically you had DevOps engineers who would take care of your servers while the developers would go and make the code that runs on the servers, right? So with this kind of with there no servers being to be managed, the developer started to have to understand more and more about these cloud providers and how these infrastructure services work together. So now you have two things to think about. You have, okay, how do all these resources tie together and how are things firing off each other? And then also, how does my code run and is this working? So the complexity and the learning curve for being a full stack or back-end developer really increased. And I don't know if you've looked at jobs in the last year. I've hardly seen one that's that doesn't have, some experience with AWS would be nice or required. So it's really affected the job market too, with, knowing AWS really helps you out in that regard. And I think that's because of this serverless boom that's kind of happening. So different cloud providers have different capabilities and they have standards and deployment tools. So they're all different. And you can't do, if you're doing raw AWS deployment, you can't just switch over to Google Cloud, right? They're all a little different. They all have the same toolings, but they're all a little different in the intricacies of them. So a lot of solutions came to solve this problem. Biggest one, I'll do a quick plug for Serverless Framework, which pretty much abstracts away all the intricacies of the different cloud platforms and puts them together into one, to where you can kind of manage something in one file. It will see what cloud provider you're going to, and it will put it in the format that cloud provider expects. One sec, sorry, I had to get some water. AWS also entered this with SAM, Serverless Application Model, which is really cool to see, a big name recognizing the problem and making a solution for it. SAM is great to some extent. I haven't used it too much, but a lot of people use it and it works well for what it is. And there's obviously Terraform as well, a little more in the weeds one, but this one also does its job well. And these are all solutions that came out, of just trying to quickly deploy serverless infrastructures to various cloud providers. So with this process being easier, even if it's easier, you still as a developer, right, need to understand what these services you're provisioning are, whether it's an easy deploy process or a click and drag one. You need to know what they're doing, how they're reacting to each other, and how they're tied together. And a lot of people think, oh, this is a typical serverless architecture, right? And this may be a typical serverless architecture for you. A lot of companies are kind of dipping their toe into serverless development where they have this monolith that's working, but we want to make a microservice in a serverless architecture. So it'll be like, an authorizer, a Lambda, and maybe an S3 bucket for storing some files or doing some like async processing. But most of the time, or if you've been at a company that is fully serverless, gung-ho about it, it looks like this. It's like the Charlie Kelly Always Sunny meme. It's just everywhere is connected to everywhere and everything's everything. So it gets a little hectic, and it's really hard to understand, especially onboarding someone brand new. It's like, oh, well, this goes to this and this goes to this, this. It's very confusing. I've been there before. It's a lot. And the configuration file, this is a serverless YAML file, gets very large. This is an actual one from one of my projects for one of my past clients. And it was about 800 lines long, and that's just like what we needed to do the backend's job. These are all the resources we needed, and it gets a little crazy. And granted, we don't have to touch it that much. It's still it's a lot to know, right? It's a lot to have to introduce to someone and say, yeah, all this stuff is tied together somehow, but it's all in this file, right? So with that all being said, where are we what's the next step in all of this, And I say the first step is eliminate this configuration file. This is probably the worst part of it. We're at a system where, we're at a time where we should be able to predict or even have things ready for something as simple as a database or a storage platform. And obviously there are exceptions to this. If you're doing something a little more security intensive, if you're doing something just a little more that you need more hands-on, owning these services makes sense, or even going to something like an EC2 instance makes sense when you need to own every aspect of the application. But I will say for 90% of applications, that isn't the case. You're usually just an API, a database, maybe an S3 bucket, something like that. And with that, developers should really just be focusing on their business logic, right? They don't need that. They shouldn't have to worry about all the other things that we've gone over before. So, and what I was saying earlier, we have an auto provisioning infrastructure. So the idea is like, oh, I'm a developer. I just wrote some code. I wrote a post to the /stuff endpoint, and this endpoint's gonna take a buffer. It's gonna take a file of some sort. It's gonna write the file. I want to store this file, and then I'm also gonna write to a database, make a database entry for it. Like, oh, this file, this path got uploaded, and then return. So this is using three things. It's using an API. It's using some kind of storage service, like blob storage, and then a database service. And this stuff can exist already. Typically you'd have to provision this and then write code to the things you provisioned. Whereas what I'm trying to, say here is this stuff can exist already, and you can utilize it before you even think about it or how it even is connected. And that's what we're doing with Serverless Cloud. We're trying to see what the user needs in their code and kind of just have the things ready as you need them. One second. And we're trying to give the emphasis of developing back to the developer instead of doing DevOps all the time. So there's no cloud provider account, there's no resource provisioning, and there's no configuration file. You just write code, and it's going to scale as a serverless architecture would, proportion to load and stuff like that. You just write code, and cloud will take care of the rest. And we also have some in runtime included development kits that let you utilize the services that are spun up for your application that are all built in. And you're always developing in the cloud. It's a recent hot take, but I've had a lot of issues where I've written some node code, and I ran it locally. I deploy it, and it completely doesn't work. And because there are a lot of variables when you put code up to the cloud. There's a lot of various runtimes, node versionings, stuff like that can change how it's going to behave in a real cloud environment. So what we kind of wanted to go for was, if your code isn't working when you're developing it, we don't want it to work in production. Or if it is working when you're developing it, it will work in production, kind of thing. So you're always developing in the cloud. And it all is powered through the CLI. So we have it's an NPM package at the moment, but you just install it locally, and it'll log in it'll prompt you to log in. If you have like a serverless account, you log in with your serverless account, or you sign up, whatever. And then once you're there, you can make a new project. And immediately when you start that new project, it's going to start live streaming your logs and errors into your terminal. And we'll go over that soon. And so it kind of feels local, even though it's not. It shows you the URL that your API is available at for your like personal instance. More on that later. And then anything as you're writing, it's just going to sync as you save. As you save files, it's going to sync your files like usually 1 to 2 seconds, maybe less, and it'll just constantly be piping it into your personal instances code. And the personal instance I've been mentioning is something. It's more like a feature branch, right? You're just messing around doing whatever you want. You're trying to figure out how this thing works or how you're going to get something to work. And that is what your personal instance would be for. But there's other instances too. Obviously we can put something to a stage, like a development stage or a production stage, where we're going to really tree shake and optimize your code. But there's also preview instances. So if another developer on your team wanted to check out the feature you're working on, you can just make a preview instance, which will copy your database state, copy your storage state and all your code, and spin up a duplicate of what you've been working on. So you can continue working, and then someone else can go check out the new feature you've been working on. And then also there's a forking, kind of like GitHub. If you want to share a project you've made, someone else can, and you can make it forkable. Someone else can I can say something like a Discord bot where you want it only in your Discord. You can publish it. Someone can fork it, just put in their Discord access keys, and now they have your Discord bot running for their Discord. And back on serverless development kits, that's just more tooling that's included in the runtime, things like APIs and databases. And we also, that being said, though, we still allow for any NPM package install or any integration, really. So if you want to pull in your own AWS account, you can pull in the AWS SDK, have your keys, and use AWS as you would usually. And that goes for any package as well. And then there's also finally a dashboard for viewing all this and having a nice visual representation of it all. So with that, I'm going to go into a little quick demo of walking through what I just described and showing you how it works. First, are there any, can we take questions right now? Is that how that works? I don't know.
Sorry, I was trying to find the mute button. It doesn't look like we have any so far, but anybody that's following along at home, if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat and I'll pass them along to Ben.
Cool. Thanks.
So, yeah, it's pretty.
All right, I will bump this font up because I don't know. Everyone's running. I forgot to do that earlier. So first, I'm gonna start a project. I'm gonna quickly highlight, the context of what we're dealing with here. And this is a typical directory that'll be spun up when you start a new project. So we're going to have, there's going to be a template file. There's going to be, package.json with some special stuff in here that kind of shows your organization that you're associated with, and then the app name that you enter when you initialize a new project. And then your usual package.json keys like dependencies, dev dependencies, and your scripts. And these all operate as usual. One interesting thing though is that you have a static folder, and the static folder is for static files. So the Cloud CLI will see anything in here and sync it to be a statically hosted file. So in this case, I actually have a React app that I quickly slapped together for a visual demo here. So don't criticize any React code too hard. But this will actually it builds into the static folder, as you can see here. And this will act as a website at the URL that I spin up. So it'll load immediately as a React app. So just to show off a little bit, I'll just start up this project, and it's spinning it up. I don't have this project on my account anymore, so it's going to spin up a new application. So I have my CSV Parser starter app, and now I'm on my personal instance, which is silent cell cloud.serverless.com. And just to show that, just to show the React app I made, let's pull it up. Isn't it beautiful? So
it's amazing.
Yeah, it's I realized that I was like, oh, I'm going to do this back-end oriented demo, but then I realized how fun Postman is to watch someone use. So it's really not. So I made this quick little, it's a CSV upload. What we'll be building today is a CSV parser. So it's something that allows a user, me, to put in a CSV file of any kind. The website will look at it. It'll allow the user to select a key to index by. So this will be a header. So in this case, I have a CSV of employees, ID, first name, last name, email, and role, all headers. And it'll let you say like, okay, what do you want to index this by when we save it? And then what do you want each, like, what's the entity name? What's a row represent? So in this case, a row represents an employee. This will fail. Well, here's my beautiful error message because we don't have the API endpoint yet. So let's just go into Cloud or the project and see what we need here. So if we look at the app.js file, we're doing a few things. So we're going to be posting on the upload CSV, the thing that just failed. We're going to be posting a form, multi-part form with the file that we selected, the index by selection, and the entry name input. And this is all going to be on a multi-part form, and we're going to post it to a CSV route. So, and the API client already has a /API here, and my URL is incorrect here. Let me fix that. That would be bad in the end. And I could probably just rebuild it again. I know my terminal's small in here. I'm just doing a build really quick to update that. All right, cool. So, and just to show, like, it updated so fast you didn't even see it. Like, I tried to go back, and that was it syncing the update I just did to the website. So now it's going to hit a real URL, and it, even if we go into like network or something, and I were to do it again, it's going to be this 404. Beautiful. We don't have a route yet. So let's write this route, right? It's a /API/CSV and looks like it is a post. So let's pull up the index file. And this Cloud does only support JavaScript and TypeScript right now, but later on down the line, we're trying to support more languages, but we're just focusing on JavaScript at the moment. So from the get-go, I already have some stuff here. I'm just pulling in the cores package and using it as middleware just for local development. So if you want to hit it from your localhost 3000 or whatever, you're going to need that, or you put in localhost right there.
So this can use the same like Express style middlewares. Okay.
Yeah.
Is it Fastify under the hood, or is it Express, or?
It's Express under the hood.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
It's like
I missed up earlier.
Customized Express. Yeah. But you can use any. So that being said, you can use any Express middleware that you may like to use or anything like that. So let's just, and it's same exact, when you want to make a route, it's same exact as Express. So API/CSV, that's what we're looking for. We want to make an async. We're going to do some async operations in here. And let's start with a try catch, because who knows what's going to go wrong. And let's just return a status code here. Res.status and JSON E. Cool. So we had our start. It's like my mouth's talking a lot. Need a lot of water. So first, we want to take in this file, right? We want to make sure that we have a file available. What Cloud does, or at least the API helper here, as you can see, we're importing API from Cloud. So this is our, provisioned helper for, the auto provisioned resources that we were talking about earlier. This is actually going to do a lot of heavy lifting for you. It automatically parses any multi-part form, URL encoded form data into your body, and into, if there's any files available, it'll put it into a files array. So we want to first check, okay, are there any files here? And then return, 400 if we got a post that didn't have any files. That's the whole point of this endpoint. We want to take this in. And I know my co-pilot will be a little presumptuous here, so just please ignore that. Should have disabled it for this, but no files were uploaded. Cool. It got that one right. Then let's just go, let's split the window here. And we're going to be taking, okay, we got an index by and an entry name key. We want to check for those too. So maybe if there isn't anything on the body, return something there. Oh man, I got caps lock on. Sorry. Let's just do a quick check, if, request.body, length. So is there no keys on the body? That means there was no other, maybe a file came up, but there wasn't an index by or entry name field on the body. So we're also going to do that as well. And now we can kind of destructure the body with the things we want to get. So entry name and index by request.body. We can also do checks for this just to, keep it safe. And where's that status? 400. Yeah. Cool. Thanks, Copilot. That was nice. Sweet. Now we got all that out of the way. We got all the checks out of the way. That's always the first part, right? You want to make sure everything is where it needs to be when you start writing the actual code that will be. So we want to pull off this buffer off the request, right? We want the file. We want to be able to write this. We want to save it to some kind of file system. So let's just destructure it like this, and it will be an array, but we're only expecting one file here. So I'm just going to do a hard-coded index of 0, and this will be the file. But this array also has a lot of other properties to it. You can get the content type of it, the original file name, and the size. So that being said, I'm going to pull off the file name as well, which will be the same kind of thing, but original name. So now we got our buffer, we got our file name. We want to store it now, right? Or we want to write it to somewhere. So that's where another tool comes in, or a development kit utilization called storage. Fitly enough, this is a S3 under the hood, but the S3 SDK sucks. I will say that. And we tried to really simplify it to where it's like almost as easy as FS, right? It's fs.write, fs.read, fs.stat, remove, all that stuff. It's really just as easy as that. So we're going to take the write response and storage.write. What path do we want to do? Probably a CSVs folder, file name, and there's the buffer. Sweet. So that'll write the file, the CSV that we've taken into a CSVs directory with the file name that it was originally named, which is great. So now we have, and the write response is just going to be, here's the path that you just wrote to. Here's the metadata that you stored, because you can also store metadata if you were to want, in this as a third argument here. We won't be needing that today. And then we want to make a database representation of this file. We want to make it a little more queryable, because the storage, while the storage utility is great, it's not really queryable, right? You have to go list and search and stuff like that. So we want to do something a little more efficient. So we'll pull in another utility called data from Serverless Cloud, and this is all built into your runtime. None of this you have to install into your project. This is all just going to be there from the get-go, and you can use all this stuff, and it's all yours. You're not sharing it with anybody. This is all unique to you and your project. And even if you were to start a new instance, this stuff would be blank. There would be nothing in the storage. There'd be nothing in data or anything like that. So we want to do data.set, and we want to do file. We'll just do file right here and file name. And then we want it. So this is our key, and data, serverless data is more of a fancy key value store, which is DynamoDB under the hood, but it uses kind of a mono table approach, if anyone's familiar with that. So it's more of namespaces, and you query namespaces based on, what's an asterisk or something like that. And you can kind of slice it into different views. So, and I'll get more into that later with different indexes that are already made for you. So this, we want to store the file name, obviously. We want to store the entry name that the user put in. We want to store index by. And this will just let us be able to look it up later really quickly and use these values when we parse the CSV file. Because as you can see, we're not parsing it here. And that's something I'll get into when I'm finished writing the API endpoint. But we don't want to parse in the API endpoint because, someone could upload a 10,000 line CSV, and parsing that could take a very long time. And then you have a pretty quick timeout on an API endpoint, about 29 seconds. So that could, one, be a bad experience for the user. They're sitting there waiting, and then it could just time out and nothing gets saved, nothing happens. You have a big old error. So we just want to save it and take care of it later, right? So our first label, this is one of those slices I was talking about where you can kind of index a different entry in the database. We're going to do like file processed, because we want to process these eventually, false. And we're also going to override it too, because someone may want to add something to their CSV that's the exact same name. We want to obviously keep this up to date in the database. And great. Now we have our storage writing. So we have our CSV being written. We have our database entry being set, and we're just going to return a 200 because it worked so far. Shouldn't get too confident. And that's going to do a write response. So yeah, now we can go back to the React app and see if we still get a 404. Shouldn't, hopefully. And we'll do the same request. Index by ID 200. Sweet, that was quick. And let's see our response here. I know this is probably small for some folks, but it just came back with the right response: the file name, the path, and any metadata, which is an empty object because we didn't save any. And just to show you like a more visual thing, this is the dashboard that kind of stays in sync with whatever you're doing with cloud. So let's go into the starter project. And this is think of this as like an application, and the instances being like your production, your dev stages, or in my case, this is my personal instance. But if you had another teammate, it would be their username, and you could go and investigate their instance as well. We'll go into mine that we've been hitting, and you can see we already have a few invocations. It's giving you the duration. We have a pretty quick API right now, I will say, and one API route, which is our API/CSV. And we have a few little utilities here to visualize the stuff you're storing. Data here will let you kind of query exactly what I was doing here, but play with anything that you've called or stored with data. So let's just get all the items really quick and see if there's anything in here. And there is. So our endpoint worked. We have a file, employees.csv, and then all the metadata I saved, right? So we got entry name, and then the index by. We want to do the ID here. And that just gives you some kind of reassurance that this thing worked as it should. And then we also have our storage tab. So this is going to be the exact representation of everything in our file system. And let's go into CSVs, and we have our employee CSV. Sweet. So we know everything worked on this endpoint. And if we were to do it again, everything would be overwritten, right? Because with data, we pass an overwrite, and then storage automatically does a overwrite if you pass the same exact path. It's just going to write the data on the same path again. So now we need to process this. The whole point of this app, right, is to take in a CSV and kind of make it a tangible, queryable interface. And we don't want to do that in the API endpoint. So the great thing about serverless, and what a lot of people really get, this is what I got in on when I started really building things with it, with the architecture in mind, is just, it's all event driven. Everything is events. So you want to react to certain events, whether it's on a database, a queue message, or in this case, an S3 file being written or a storage file being written. And we kind of simplified that process for you. So typically in a serverless architecture, you would have to make a bunch of event mappings. You'd have to tie things together in your configuration file and be like, okay, I want this Lambda function to fire when I get an object in this bucket. And then you have to write the Lambda code. And just like that, with this, you just do storage.on, and it's all glob. So if you want to react to every single storage event you have, you can just do an asterisk. But in this case, we want to do a write event because we're writing up here. And we want to then we do a path. So we don't want to write to, like, say we have another feature down the future that's like user profile pictures. We don't want to fire this function when someone uploads a profile picture. We just want to do CSVs. So here's a little glob pattern right there. So anything in the CSVs directory that ends in .csv. And the event that we get is just going to be a object with a path. So the path that was just written, and then the event name. So storage just fires on write and remove events. So you can also have a side effect. If someone deletes a CSV, you may want to go clear that out of your database when someone deletes something, whether that's through an API call or however. It's going to fire either way. It's going to be an event in storage. So it's already guessing a lot here. I'm gonna get rid of that, just so it's not as kind
of scary how good it can be sometimes.
It is really scary. I love it, but I also hate it. But it helps me a lot, so I can't really complain. So we're just gonna log E right here, because because we can't really, I just want to see in the console if there's an error. And I will say all this time, every time I save, it's going so fast. It only tells you if it updated your code, if it takes like about a second or more. Everything that we've been doing, I've been hitting save pretty much every line. It's just going to send it up as soon as you're done. So it's pretty much always, that's what I was saying earlier. It's kind of feels like you're developing locally, right? Typically the feedback loop of doing serverless development is, okay, let me update this code. Let me do a deploy, or let me drag my zip file. Let me use my tool to get this up in the cloud. And this is just it's just, as long as you have this running, it's going to be syncing.
And that syncs to your personal instance. Is that right?
Yes, that's my personal instance. So yeah, you can't really, if you're doing like a staged instance, some like production or development, you can't really live code that for good reason, right? You don't want to be able to live code production. So yeah, those like stages, those deployment stages, you can't live code with. Same with, really, it's just the personal instance that's going to be this constant syncing, because that's like a feature branch. You want to get immediate feedback and be able to test things out and stuff like that.
That's awesome. We've got one question in the chat. Maybe something you're going to cover here in a few, but Scott has asked, how do you handle access control like you would normally with like IAM roles? So maybe that's something you touch as well, like permissions on the storage objects, but also maybe even authentication authorization, stuff like that too.
Yeah. So there isn't any auth yet. So if you were on to do like, that's something we really are trying to do with like a user authorization system with something like Cognito. But everything that's stored in like storage by default is all private. Like no one can really write it unless you're accessing it via like this, or if you're logged in to your account on the dashboard, you can view it. But with an exception to that, there is also a public folder. If we go back to the dashboard in storage, there's this public folder and these things are all sitting publicly. So if you store something in the public folder, it's going to be available at your URL, /public/my file, right? That's as far as we have for like access control. We definitely want to get some more like ring permissions in soon, with like different users can see different things or even different files. But right now it's all just kind of private by default, with some exceptions of like if you store something in public. Same with the data too. I don't know if that answers the question.
Oh yeah, it makes sense.
Anything else, or was that the only one?
Yeah, that's the only one so far.
Cool. All right, well, let's parse the CSV. First, we're going to take off the path of the event, because we don't really, we know it's a write event. We're only reacting to write events. And what's great is we have this path we want to get, but we want to get this extra metadata, right, that we've stored with our data, this file name, entry name, and index by, to be able to parse this how the user wanted. So to get that up, we need to get the file name off the path, which we'll just do oh, there we go. I was going to type that, but I guess not. And now we have our file name, which we know is stored in our data because we got this far, right? So we've written and we've stored. So we know this thing's going to exist in data. And we're just going to get, this does support TypeScript. I'm just going to any it right now, and file name. And this will be, oh, I should probably, assign it to something. File stuff. Yeah, that works. So we have file stuff now. We want to get the entry name and the index by off of the file stuff, because we're going to need this later when we were parsing it. And great. Now we want to get, now we have the path, right? So the storage.onListener doesn't give you the buffer of the file, because you could have a huge file that you just uploaded. We don't want to load that in preemptively. So, but you do have the path though, the exact path. So all we need to do is just get the CSV buffer, and we're going to read it using storage with read buffer and path. So now we have a nice CSV buffer. This is going to load the entire thing into memory, but if you want to deal with bigger files, the regular read actually returns a readable stream that you can kind of asynchronously go through if you want to just get parts of a file or split it off into processing. But since it's a CSV, just a text file, it's going to be pretty small. So we're just going to read it all in the memory. And then for parsing the CSV, I'm going to use Papa Parse. And that's already in the project, but like it'd be as easy as, just typing, either adding it to your package.json and running an npm install or yarn install. And then, or you can just type like install my package right here, and Cloud will install it, add it to your package.json, and also sync the content of the node modules to your instance. Where'd my thing go? Oh, there it is. Cool. So let's import pop-up parse. And we need to just CSV string. Let's do CSV. I'll just call it CSV, right? So I think it's pop-up parse and then CSV buffer. We'll toString it because it wants a CSV string, I believe, by default. So this would be like a whole buffer, but using buffers toString, we'll do UTF-8 just to be safe. And we want headers, right? We want to parse these headers out. Not a true, just regular true. Sweet. So now we have this parsed CSV, but we need to iterate through it, right? We need to go through every row to save it to the data. So let's just check if we got any data, because it could be an empty CSV, right? It could be anything. We'll check if it has length. And then with that, we're going to do a promise.all to speed it up, because we don't really care about the order here. We just want to get every row into the database as fast as possible. So let's csv.data.map, and we'll call it a row. And then we just kind of have to do man, Copilot, stop it. Getting too good. We want to make a new kind of namespace, right? So as Copilot is showing you already, it's kind of guessing, because I've definitely not done this before I did this talk, but we want our user entered entry name to be our namespace, right? And then we want our index by to be what we can query by. So in this case, we put up an employee CSV that we want to index by ID. So we're just gonna, and that if you noticed, as we stored in the in here right here, I didn't want to touch anything in the index by, because that's the exact header name. We want to make sure it can get it off every row correctly. So whether it's first name, we don't want to make it lowercase. We don't want to take out spaces. We want the exact key that row is going to be look like when we're parsing it. So let's just do this now. Entry name, row, index by. I'm just going to cheat here because I just explained all that. And what's going on? There we go. And we'll actually pass an overwrite true here, just because someone could upload the same CSV, or it could be a different CSV, but with the same kind of entry, and maybe with some updated employee information or something like that, because we're doing an employee CSV here. And this will just make sure it's always up to date as we're processing these. And wonderful, now we are saving every row in our CSV. And then after this promise, after we go through the CSV, we want to also update our file entry to make sure to reflect that it's been processed, right? File name. We'll do file stuff, and then update our label of file process true. Oh, and we want to overwrite it. Cool. Awesome. Now we have this pretty slick listener that's going to react to all your CSV files and try to parse them based on user entry. And let's test it out. So let's go back. I'll do another submission. It's just going to, since I did overwrite everywhere, it's just going to go over what I just did. But instead, this time, I should have put a log in there. I'll do it again. I'll put a log just to kind of show that this is how quick it reacts to a CSV being saved. Oh, and I should do it after path is defined. We got there, save, Command Tab fast. There we go. So that's how quick it was. It updated and reacted to saving the CSV in literally 10 seconds. And that's just some reassurance, okay, the storage listener's firing. Awesome. So that means we didn't see, and we have a little console log here for any errors that happened in the try catch. So we didn't see any errors pop up. So that means this should populate our database. And we can go look in the dashboard and just get all items. And we have one. That's not right. Oh, undefined too. Oh no. Oh no. I wonder what happened. Let's see. This might not be the right document. Nope, that's way more than one. So what happened? I don't know. Entry name, row index by. Yeah, weird. Let's just see. You know, this is a live coding, so I'm gonna be honest and frank with you all, and show what I would do. Log csv.data and see what's happening. And I will refresh the React app. Maybe that's something to do with it. And pull in employees at CSV again. Cool. Index by ID. We'll do the same thing. Save. So it's working here. And we're getting all the data. I wonder why it's not saving everything. This is kind of a trivial thing that we're dealing with here, because obviously
on line 61, when you're setting the data, you have entry name from the outer scope, but you're using row index by on the inside the map. So maybe it looks like index by is undefined in your database key for some reason.
Yeah, that's actually a good point. Let's see what index by is coming back as. Well, we could also just go look in data too. I might go do that actually. That sounds like a better idea. So file, let's do file.
So it's basically overriding each record because the key is not unique because it is undefined on the second half of the key, the sort key.
Yeah. See, we got a process true here. So it's still like going through something, but yeah, you're right. It seems like row index by is undefined. So I wonder if it's I wonder why the row, it seems like the headers aren't correct, even though it is. So let's just do it again, see what happens. Sorry, everyone. This was way more elegant yesterday. Now it's going wrong.
No, man, I love it when we have problems like this because it's like it shows, okay, this is the type of stuff you'll see. You know,
Yep.
How do you get past it? So it's all good.
Ironically, when I did this by myself 2 days ago, none of this happened. So that's classic. All right. Well, we have ID, and oh, you know what? It's putting the header as the first part of the array. Makes sense. So that sucks. Maybe headers not being there will help. But that doesn't make sense to me. Because it's like the first item of the array is actually not what I thought, but we'll take off the headers true and just get the data. And let's just see, see what that brings us. It seems like it isn't even uploading the entire CSV though. Well, no, we're printing the whole thing, right? We saw that we're printing the entire thing right here. And it's coming back as this is the only thing. What was the header? It's like it's not parsing it. Anyway, sorry, I'm getting a little thrown off here. My rhythm is all thrown off. I'm just gonna keep debugging this, and then I'll give it like 2 more minutes, and then we'll move on. Right? I just want to see one more thing here. I'm just gonna print the whole CSV data. And let's make this like user or something just to differentiate our tries here. So we're getting the entire thing here, which is great. So our whole list. Yeah, so CSV data, I think this may have worked actually. Oh, why'd I refresh that? Oops. Man. Okay, one more thing. We're gonna go 1. We're gonna go index by and figure out why this thing I selected isn't going up. and we'll see what the issue is, hopefully. Undefined. Well, that helped, right? It's undefined. So that's it's like it's not going to an object here.
Yeah, so maybe let's like in your map, let's just log out row for each row and see what the keys are. Maybe it's some weird structure or something.
Yeah, it seems like pop-up parse isn't like putting, usually I'm used to it going to straight to an object. That's not row. And let's so it's updating real quick. Let's clear this, make it a little more interesting or a little clear. All right, let's watch it again. Yeah, so it's just that it's not parsing it into the headers, which is interesting. So maybe we do need a headers true here, because it should, we want it as an object, right, where the key is each header and then the value of each header. So let's put headers true and see if this changes anything. And I'm gonna run it again. You guys are seeing real life development here. Interesting. I think it's still not parsing it as I expected. Oh, you know why?
It's header singular. Yeah, I was looking at the docs. I just saw that too.
Of course, the S will kill you. All right, let's do it again. Beautiful. That's what I meant to happen. But I just want to just talk about how quick this all was, though. Like, we didn't do any AWS, we didn't do any Lambda deployment. We just typed cloud and started going. And like this whole time, it's kind of felt like I've been running a local server, right? It's just been, it's just been immediately up to date. Where with no feedback loops of deployment, no waiting around. I know it's really bad for me. I'm very distracted easily, and if I'm waiting for a 5-minute deployment, I will go do something else, and then completely forget about what I was doing when the deployment's finished. So this has really helped me with building anything I want, really, any personal projects at least. So let's get all items now. Should be way bigger. Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah, there we go. Thank you.
I was gonna say Scott in the chat said header true as well, so he was tracking.
Well,
yeah, this is great. So there's one other question in the chat, if you have time, not to get you too derailed, but someone's asking about can you specify when an instance should update? So for example, if it's a staging or production environment, I'm guessing like the CI/CD pipeline, right? Like if you merge into a specific branch, how does that kind of flow?
Yeah. We have a whole you can use cloud through the CI. And you can actually generate an access key on the dashboard that you can use pretty much as I believe the environment variable name is like serverless _ access key. And if that is your account, any cloud commands that you do via if you want to do it in CI will work. So say you have a development branch and you have your cloud project and you're merging in development, you can fire a GitHub Actions thing. They'll go, all right, cloud deploy dev. And it'll take in that new code and update your development instance. Same with production. Same with any stage. It's arbitrary. You can have any stage. I hope that answers the question. And I think that'd be like in settings, access keys right here. You can make a new one and then use that in your GitHub Actions. So anything that you have permission to do, you can do. So any project you want to update a stage for, you'll be able to do that.
Very cool.
Yeah. And I guess just really quick, we can do, I kind of touched on everything I really wanted to. We can make another endpoint just to show. We have like a little mini postman in here, but you kind of get the idea. It's like, I was going to make something that lets you get, we'll just do it. It'll take me 5 minutes, unless I forget an S again. That's always fun. And we're just going to make an endpoint. So we got all this data, we parsed it, we saved it. It's great. But we want to be able to return these employees that we just saved for, queryable use. Copilot guessed, all right, except we're using namespaces. So we want to do something like this. And this is actually just going to do It's going to get every item in our fancy key value store in serverless data that starts with employee. So it could be, that's why we did employee : ID. So it's going to return every employee. It'll actually return the key though. So I should probably name this employee response. And then we're going to like map through this, or I think .items. Yeah. .map item.value. There we go. And this will be a nice little, like, it'll just be an array of all the data we just see here, but we'll be able to return it to any client that requests it. So let's see if this endpoint worked. Send. I didn't. Did I forget an S again? Oh, employees. I added an S this time. Of course. So hopefully this will sync and then send. Oh, beautiful. So there's all our saved CSV data. And that is really, that's the end of my demo. I had a few more slides just kind of going over like what really is next and to answer any questions. But that was just a very brief example of just how quick this thing is. And I just put together an API that took a file. Obviously, the React took me shamefully longer, but we're not talking about that. We're talking about the back end. And I just want to showcase really how fast you can get something up and running, get some feedback, and get something saving files and making an organized data store and returning it to any client that you may be building it for, or you're not building it for a client. I guess, I'll show you one more thing. Because another huge thing in serverless development is like cron jobs. So you want to schedule tasks. A lot of people use just Lambdas just for scheduled tasks. We have some for that. It's just called schedule. And it'll do exactly that, but you just do like schedule.every like 1 minute, and we'll console log hello world or something. And this will show up in your console, but obviously you can do anything you want here with any of the other serverless development kits and interact with your data.
That's neat. So does it use like a natural process, like language processing for the time series, or can you actually use cron tab?
You can actually
use as well.
You can use both. Yeah. Okay, cool. For like cron, you do like schedule.cron. But if you want to use like language, you do every 1 hour, 1 minute, 1 day, 1 month, 2 days. Yeah, whatever. Any unit you can think of. We're not going by moon cycles yet, though. There was some discussion of that. So yeah, that was just
whenever Mercury is in retrograde.
Yeah, well, every first waning moon, do that. And I just want to highlight some other things that I didn't really show today. There's also obviously params, so you can go into your dashboard, and if you have another integration you want to utilize that really isn't included in Serverless Cloud, you can add, as you would like an environment variable, but you can add it to your, where did it even go? Parameters. So you can just store secrets here. That'll be they're never saved, obviously, in plain text. That you can't even view them in plain text. We've had some requests for that, but we're still a little skeptical of like showing things that could potentially be very sensitive in plain text. But this is pretty much like your environment variables here. And other things were scheduled tasks. Well, I just did a quick one of that. Data events too, just like storage.on, you can do data.on for like, if I wanted to react to, say I wanted to send an email to every employee that just got added to the system, you could do data.on employee star and get their email and send an email to them, all kind of asynchronously in the background. You don't have to do an API call for it. You're not limited by that timeout. And then also bring your own framework, which I kind of touched on earlier, but that's say you have an Express app or a Koa app. I don't know who uses Koa, but it's there and it supports it. But you can it's just an adapter that you pass in a previously existing app like Express, and it'll work with cloud. You just do like HTTP use my app, and it'll show up in your routes. It'll show up exactly like you're using the built-in API helper. And then in the future, the next few months, we're trying to get like a full event system going, like, events.emit this thing, and then you can have a function that goes, okay, events.on this thing with the like delay. Think of it like kind of like just a queue system with delays and stuff like that. Or you can make it fire at a specific time. And then WebSockets, obviously, and GraphQL. Those are our two big requests that we're trying to get in relatively soon.
Yeah, that sounds awesome.
Yeah.
So one question around just like the kind of touches on the bring your own framework, but also the stuff you were talking about a second ago with like responding to data events or even storage events, does it create a separate Lambda for each of those kind of callbacks or those handlers, or is it just a single Lambda that just has a subscription passing into it or something? Like how does that work? Like, what does it look like under the hood?
It's all one Lambda. So all your code is going to be in one Lambda. And we're using ES build to make it very small as it can be. And it pretty much, we have our own custom runtime that we're running on Lambda that based on the event incoming to your Lambda will invoke different parts of your code. So like for the schedule.on, we go through, oh, okay, we just got a cron event. Does this app have any .on, .every, like our handler events, handler functions? We just got a data event. We just got a storage event. Does this have any handlers for this? And that'll be the same with events.
Gotcha.
That's all in one.
Neat.
Mm-hmm. And if there's any other questions, now would be a perfect time because I am done.
Yeah, let me check the chat real quick and see if anybody else have any. Doesn't look like we have any yet, but I'll wait a couple seconds to see if anybody has any other ones.
Yeah, that was it.
This is really cool. I'm super impressed with the ergonomics of it. Like it just makes sense, and it's, man, like when you said zero config, like you weren't kidding,
config, man. Yeah, it's because it all came from a pain point of all of us. I mean, I was brought on, probably like 6 months into the project, but it was really just like everyone kind of decided like this is the next step after all this config. We can make configuration as easy as possible with the framework or any other deployment tool, but then really the true next step is just not having to think about that infrastructure and just having it be there.
So I know this is kind of like in a public preview right now, right? So if a couple questions attached to that. One of them is, how can we get folks on the stream sign up for this and let them try it out? And then B, what's the pricing model going to look like? Is this going to be like transparent pricing from a cloud provider, or is it going to be like cost plus, or like what does it look like for like being a member of this cloud platform?
I'll show you. That's a really good point. I should show everyone how to do this. That's my bad. But yeah, for signing up, it's just as easy as going to cloud.serverless.com. And if you have a serverless account, it'll use that. And then for pricing though, it's all on the little overview here. But pricing is going to be pretty much flat. There's going to be a free tier. And right now it's all free. So if you want to try it out and like figure out if you like it or not, you can go and try it. No limits, nothing. It's at worst, we're in like a beta phase, right? So everything is we're getting feedback, right? So we want people to sign up and try it and try to break it, try to do something that they would do typically in a serverless environment or even not in a serverless environment, and see what is missing, what people really want. For pricing though, I'll pull up the pricing page really quick if I can find it. There we go. Pricing, in fact. So it's going to be like, this is, not set in stone. This is kind of just estimated, but for a full team, it's going to be $49 user a month. And then a developer, if you're just a solo developer, it's just $25 a month. And then obviously there's a free tier as well that, you can have this free tier. And then this is only when you break the free tier. So there'll be like the limits here you can see. And if you break that, then you start paying a little extra. So I think you mentioned like pricing plus.
Yeah. That's neat. So it's very similar to like Vercel or Zeit or whatever they're called now. Vercel, I guess.
Vercel.
Basically pay per seat per developer, but you have like a really generous free tier on top of that. So
indeed.
Neat.
Yeah. And if you want to go sign up, just serverless.com or cloud.serverless.com. Come try it out. And honestly, if you like it, love it, hate it, I would love to hear about your experience so I can help make it better.
Awesome. Yeah, so I don't see any other questions in the chat, but if you have any questions, kind of after the stream ends, feel free to reach out to Ben on NashDev or on, I guess you have like a Twitter or anything like that.
Yeah, my Twitter is it's like Devi Ben, but it's two V's. It's stupid.
I like it. That is my Twitter. Yeah, so feel free to reach out to Ben. I'm sure he'll be glad to field any questions. To say again, just kind of a quick reminder, we're looking for talks for the rest of the year. We're trying to get back in person. I know that folks are eager to be back in person and see each other. We were slated actually to be back in person this month, but with the Omicron and the various variants that are floating out there, didn't quite feel comfortable getting everybody back together just yet. So just kind of play it by ear. We'll try to get back here soon. We've got a really awesome space at the new Asurian headquarters downtown, free parking, all that stuff. So it's going to be a really cool spot for us to hang out once we're able to. So we just want to make sure we're doing it safely. So anyways, please again, join me in thanking Ben for this awesome talk. It was really great. Learned a ton, and this product, this platform looks really, really freaking cool. I'm looking forward to the future of serverless cloud. So really cool.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me.
Yeah,
awesome.
Thanks, man. I'll catch y'all next month. We'll be here, same bat time, same bat channel. So hit you up.